Imagine standing in the heart of Baghdad more than 1,000 years ago, surrounded by a civilization where the pursuit of knowledge was not considered a luxury, but a responsibility, a source of strength, and a path toward understanding the world created by Allah. The streets of Baghdad were filled with merchants, travelers, scholars, students, craftsmen, and seekers of knowledge arriving from distant lands. At the center of this extraordinary intellectual atmosphere stood the famous House of Wisdom, remembered in Arabic as Bayt al-Hikmah, a symbol of the remarkable scholarly culture that developed during the Abbasid era. The story of this institution is not simply the story of a building filled with books. It represents a powerful lesson about curiosity, discipline, patience, and a determination to preserve knowledge for generations yet unborn. In the 8th and 9th centuries, Baghdad grew into one of the greatest cities of the medieval world. Under the Abbasid caliphs, learning received extraordinary attention, and scholars gathered from different regions and intellectual traditions. Ancient works written in Greek, Persian, Syriac, and other languages were studied, translated, preserved, and discussed. Knowledge traveled across borders, and Baghdad became a meeting place where ideas could encounter one another. Among the most important activities associated with this intellectual movement was translation. Scholars worked carefully to make important scientific, philosophical, medical, and mathematical writings accessible to Arabic-speaking readers. Their work helped preserve texts that might otherwise have disappeared and created opportunities for new generations of scholars to examine earlier discoveries. Yet the true power of this golden age was not simply collecting the knowledge of others. It was the courage to question, investigate, calculate, observe, and build upon what had come before. Astronomy was studied by people who wanted to understand the movements of heavenly bodies. Mathematics developed through the efforts of scholars who searched for more precise methods of calculation. Medicine advanced as physicians observed diseases, recorded treatments, and studied earlier medical traditions. Literature and philosophy also flourished as scholars explored language, reason, ethics, and human understanding. This atmosphere teaches us something deeply important today. Great achievements rarely appear suddenly. They are built through thousands of small efforts made by people who continue learning even when nobody is watching. The scholars of Baghdad remind us that knowledge requires humility because every answer can lead to another question, and every discovery can open another door. Their legacy challenges the modern generation to value education, protect books, respect teachers, and never become satisfied with ignorance. But beneath the brilliance of Baghdad, a question was quietly waiting. How far could this extraordinary pursuit of knowledge continue, and what would happen when the world around it began to change? The answer would become one of the most dramatic chapters in the story of Islamic civilization, reminding humanity that knowledge can survive through people even when institutions and empires themselves do not. As the intellectual life of Baghdad continued to expand, the House of Wisdom became a powerful symbol of a civilization that understood that progress begins with the courage to learn. Imagine the manuscripts arriving from distant lands, carried across deserts and mountains by travelers who understood the value of preserving ideas. Imagine scholars carefully comparing translations, correcting errors, studying diagrams, recording observations, and passing their discoveries to students. Behind every page was patience. Behind every calculation was concentration. Behind every new idea was a person willing to spend years searching for an answer. This is where the story becomes more than history. It becomes a lesson for anyone who has ever felt that their own efforts are too small to matter. The scholars of the Abbasid age did not possess modern computers, laboratories, satellites, or digital libraries. Yet they worked with the resources available to them and achieved remarkable advances through observation, reasoning, mathematics, and persistent study. Their example demonstrates that limitations do not always determine what a person can accomplish. Determination can turn limited resources into meaningful progress. A student with a simple book can begin a journey that changes an entire life. A single question can lead to years of research. A single discovery can inspire generations. Then comes the suspenseful part of this story. The House of Wisdom and Baghdad seem to represent an intellectual world that could continue growing without end. But history is never still. Political struggles, changing powers, conflicts, and uncertainty gradually transformed the world around the city. The brilliance of a civilization could not protect it from every danger. As generations passed, Baghdad experienced periods of instability. While the wider Islamic world continued to change. Yet the knowledge created, translated, copied, and shared during previous centuries had already traveled far beyond the walls of the city. This is one of the greatest lessons hidden within the history of the House of Wisdom. Knowledge is powerful because it can travel. A building can be damaged, a library can disappear, and an empire can fall, but ideas carried in the minds of people can cross borders and centuries. The scholars who worked in Baghdad were therefore participating in something much larger than their own lifetimes. Their efforts became part of a chain connecting civilizations with later generations. Their manuscripts, methods, calculations, and intellectual traditions influenced scholars in other parts of the world, helping knowledge continue its journey. For us today, this legacy carries a personal message. Do not underestimate the value of learning one page at a time. Do not believe that your present circumstances permanently define your future. The great intellectual achievements associated with Baghdad were built by people who devoted themselves to study, discipline, and perseverance. Their story reminds us that greatness begins quietly, often with a person sitting alone with a book, asking a question, refusing to give up, and believing that understanding is worth pursuing. The House of Wisdom, therefore, remains an enduring reminder that civilizations rise when people respect knowledge and continue learning together. The story of the House of Wisdom in Baghdad leaves us with a message that reaches far beyond the walls of an ancient city. It reminds us that the greatest strength of civilization is not only found in its armies, wealth, buildings, or political power, but in the minds of people who are willing to learn, think, create, and share what they discover. The scholars of the Abbasid era lived in a world without the technologies that surround us today, yet their dedication to knowledge helped create an intellectual legacy that continued traveling across generations. Their example teaches us that progress begins when curiosity becomes stronger than fear and when learning becomes a lifelong commitment. Today, information is available with a single search. Books can be carried inside a small device, and communication can connect people across continents within seconds. Yet having access to knowledge is not the same as seeking wisdom. The people of Baghdad remind us that knowledge requires effort. It requires reading when entertainment is easier, studying when distractions are everywhere, questioning when accepting easy answers feels comfortable, and continuing when results do not appear immediately. The House of Wisdom can therefore become a mirror for our own lives. It asks us whether we're using the opportunities available to us or allowing them to pass unnoticed. The scholars of that remarkable period also teach another powerful lesson. No civilization grows through the efforts of one person alone. Knowledge develops when people preserve what earlier generations discovered, examine it carefully, improve it, and pass it forward. This chain of learning connects the past with the future. Every teacher who inspires a student, every student who studies with determination, every researcher who investigates a difficult question, and every writer who preserves valuable knowledge becomes part of that chain. Perhaps this is why the memory of Baghdad continues to inspire people centuries later. The city reminds us that darkness does not defeat a civilization when people continue searching for light through knowledge, wisdom, and perseverance. Even when political powers change and institutions disappear, the intellectual work of generations can continue influencing humanity. The legacy of the House of Wisdom is therefore not merely a historical achievement. It is a challenge to every generation that follows. Learn more, think deeper, preserve what is valuable, and use knowledge responsibly. If you're struggling today, remember that every great journey begins with a single step. You do not need to know everything before you begin. You only need the courage to open the first page, ask the first question, learn the first lesson, and continue moving forward. The scholars of Baghdad could not see the future impact of every page they translated or every discovery they recorded, yet their dedication became part of a legacy that crossed centuries. Your efforts may also have consequences that you cannot see today. Study with patience. Work with purpose. Seek wisdom with humility. Let your curiosity become discipline, and let your discipline become progress. The House of Wisdom stands in history as a reminder that knowledge can illuminate generations and that the pursuit of learning can become a legacy greater than a lifetime. If you are benefiting from our topics, please subscribe, like, and turn on the bell notification so you can see our new videos early.